This project is supported by my friends at Geica Music. Visit their website www.geica.com or click the affiliate link in the description. Hello everybody, welcome back to Fanblade. If you haven't seen the last couple of episodes, go back and watch those first, because otherwise this is going to make no damn sense. Seriously, pause this and go back, I'll wait. Okay, so now that you're all caught up, I need to put a bunch of electronic things in here, and a bunch of electronic things at this end as well as one or two mechanical things, and it's all going to get a little bit convoluted. So I am simply going to pop this thing on its end over there so I can have some bench space to work with, and then I'm going to carry on building it. So here is the little fan heater that I've got for it. That of course is going there. It will be up the other way. These wires are going to go through a hole that I've drilled there up into the main control area. I need to build a little enclosure for this so that that's effectively walled off on two sides, and then at the base I'll have a little removable filter. Because if this thing ever sucks any dust into it, then two things could potentially happen. The first one is that the dust will hit the element and burn, and then you get smoke blowing into the chamber. That's probably not great. The other thing is that if it makes it all the way through, it could very well stick to the finish that I'm trying to cure, so we don't want that either. Dust is bad. Dust is bad. The motor will of course be sticking out the end of there. There's a little spacer in there at the moment that's for the previous motor that was on this. This one's a little bit larger, so I'll need to make a new one of them. But then I will need to make a little torque bracket attached to this that goes up and that holds that rigid, because if this isn't held rigid, it could potentially turn itself, and we don't want it turning itself, we want it driving the shaft. So that's probably actually the first thing I need to do, because then I can get the measurements of how large I need to make the rest of the whole enclosure. So the motor is in, the power supply is in, the power supply is currently hooked up and is switched on, so I've got to be a little bit careful what I touch in this area because mains voltage is no joke. But I've done a test with one of these switches and I've figured it out. Now when you switch the switch, light comes on, motor comes on, everything's good. I've got 4 more of those switches. They are 16 amps, so they will take any amount of load that I'm going to put on them with this contraption. I've also got a big one, which is going to be the main power switch. Now, this is going to mean a lot of wires going back and forth. It's going to be a little bit difficult to see what's what, but I have got a few terminal strips which I will be attaching everything to, one for positive and one for negative, and hopefully that'll allow me to keep track of everything that's going on here, because, yeah, this is going to get a little bit messy, but I think that's probably the only way that this is actually going to happen. So that's a control panel. My friend Peter Stephen put a comment on the last video. He said, "Will the monster live, Doctor?" Yes, well, I'm assembling its brain now, Igor. I will, of course, be making a whole other piece to go over the motor, and then I need to make the heater enclosure as well, but this is excellent progress. I can, at the very least, sort of temporarily screw all of this down so I can work out how long all the wires need to be and how I'm going to route them so it's all nice and tidy on the inside. Excellent progress. Let's carry on. are in, they're hooked up, or at the very least, the lighting part of them is all hooked up. This is fine. The heating element, that is hooked up, but I cannot for the life of me get this thing to talk to the motor. I have had the motor spinning, I've had the thing heating up by connecting it directly to the power, but I cannot seem to get this unit here to switch the motor in and on and off. I have been working with the settings. I have downloaded the manual from French. I just can't get this to talk to that. So what I think I'm going to do, rather than waste any more time on this, is I'm simply going to use that switch there to turn the motor on and off, and I'm going to use that as a temperature gauge, because it is fairly accurate. The heating probe does actually work. If I grab that, you'll see the temperature start to climb, but it's not turning the motor on. I cannot actually get it to do it automatically, so I'm just going to have to do it manually, and that's just the way it's going to have to be. With any project like this, there's always certain milestones you want to hit, certain parts of the project you want to get to, because they'll either help you feel like you're achieving something, or maybe it's the fun bit and you want to get to that. Well, with this thing, it is absolutely putting the LEDs in and switching them on and, seeing how bright they are. There's always a few things you got to do first, though. With this one, I've got 3 or 5 things I've got to do before I'm ready to put the LEDs in. First off, I've got to put the top on. That, of course, will need some reflective foil on there. Then I've got to work out exactly what my spacing is going to be for the LEDs. Now, with these, you can only run these for 5 meters before... I don't know what happens at the end of 5 meters. Either they overheat or there's just too much current draw and they stop working. I just don't know. But I have 18 meters of this stuff, so I sort of need to cut it into sections and then run a lot of different wires down. And I've made a couple of extra terminal strips. These 2 are specifically for the LEDs. These are going to get all of the wires come through, wired to them, and then these 2 will get wired to the main switch. So that'll be fun, sorting out that rat's nest of cabling. I also want to put some white LEDs just on the inside of this edge, and also probably just under the top as well. That is so that I will be able to see what I'm doing in there when I'm brushing the resin on. Seems, like a proactive thing to make my life a little bit easier in the future. Now, the UV lights themselves are going to be a little bit different. I'm going to do some weird things to them, because if I were to just put them in strips going along, well, it would be even coverage all around the entire inside of the chamber, but I don't actually want even coverage on the inside of the chamber, because there's a lot of dead space in here. Anything past this point is never going to have any resin in it that I need to cure. Also, probably from about there back, I do not need LEDs mounted on this surface aiming that way. There's nothing ever going to be there. So what I'm thinking, I will have LEDs on each end aiming in. That makes sense to me. But what I'm going to do, instead of running strips horizontally, I'm actually going to go vertically. So there will be a strip of white LEDs, and then a bunch of wires to run all the different sections of UV lights. Then, from about halfway down here, goes down, across, up, and then about halfway back the top of the lid. That is 1 meter. That's a pretty convenient measurement. I've got 18 of those. So I can put 2 meters at that end, 2 meters at that end. I probably will put maybe 2 meters in the dead area up there, maybe 2 meters in the dead area up there, but that's going to leave me with 10 meters worth of LEDs that I can then cram into this space in the center, right in the kill zone, right where I need it to be. Heater on. Extractor fan blowing in. I'll have to turn that around. White lights on. And finally, disco.
To the Selwyn District Council this evening. Today we're going to brief you on the current situation for the Selwyn District. As you know, we are under a state of emergency due to the severe weather that we're experiencing at present.
I've just had some information as I was standing up for the stand-up with you to say that Christchurch has just put themselves into a local state of emergency as well. We can see that they're dealing with a lot of water, but you know, the response here is outstanding. They know what they're doing here. This is not the first time they've had to deal with weather events. Continuing to monitor and look at the amount of rain that's falling and the amount of water that people are going to have to deal with.
So, long story short, my garage is flooded. Hello everybody, welcome to my studio. Long-term viewers will be well acquainted with my practice of taking a break every winter, and that is not only due to the cold making it sort of fairly dangerous to use sharp tools when you can't feel your fingers, but also because the garage floods. Does it every year. Christchurch is a very, very flat city. There's no hills to speak of really, except for sort of just along the south edge, but the most of it is just a plain all the way across. Now that's fine. They've engineered the stormwater system so that everything would just run out to sea, just beautifully, just trickle on out there. Now, about 14 years ago, we had a fairly major earthquake, and that levelled half the central business district, but it also shook all the ground up. So nothing's where it was sitting before, and now none of the stormwater drains away. It all just kind of gathers in unfortunate places. And they've done an awful lot of remedial work to try and fix this. There's been a massive boom in roadworks in this place for the last decade. In fact, outside my place right now, this is a clip of the flooding directly outside my house. All of that water fell within the last 24 hours. Now, it's not actually that bad on our property here, but between the garage and the studio, there is a bit that's sunk, and that likes to, get a few inches of water, and then, of course, that comes in through the door of the garage. Now, that is a bit of a problem. The footage that I shot here was when it was just starting, and I can promise you it's going to get worse. And as I'm filming this now, yes, it's got quite bad. Now, I can get a small pump and pump that water straight back out of the garage. That would be an easy fix if it were only that easy. The earthquake had another effect in that there's a lot of cracks through the floor of the garage, and when the earth becomes so saturated, the moisture just comes up through those cracks, and that's when you know that it's time to shut down for winter. Now, the visible signs of that water coming up through those cracks, that will sort of dry out over the next couple of days, but the water underneath the garage is still sodden. The humidity levels are going to be huge. At the same time, the temperature is dropping because we are coming into winter, and the place just freezes over. It just becomes just a damp, frozen wasteland over winter. It's starting now. I have to shut down. Even halfway through this project, I hate to do it. You have no idea how much I hate to just cut all the momentum that I've made. And to say nothing of the fact that this series of videos is sponsored by Geica. So my apologies to Geica. I want to show off this beautiful bridge that you've sent me. You don't really get to see how good this thing is until it's on a base, and that's not going to be happening for about another 3 months. But these are just the circumstances that you have to deal with sometimes. Life will throw you curveballs. Quite often, I've found. Life will throw stuff at you, and It's really the difference between being a classical musician and a jazz musician. A classical musician has all of the notes laid out, everything is pre-planned, you know exactly what you're going to do, you can rehearse it, you can work through it, and then it's up to your skill as a performer to breathe life into those notes. Whereas a jazz musician will just make it up as they go, and it's a different skill set to be able to weave some melodic or harmonic shapes out of thin air. I think in life you really have to take both approaches. You do your best planning, but when life throws you a curveball, you got to be able to improvise. And if I have any real skills, I would say my ability to think on my feet, problem solve, and yeah, just make shit up. So what I will be doing for the next 3 months is I will be sitting in here. I've got a lot of instruments. I might write an album. I've actually got a couple of projects on the go. The K Duncan Band is recording an album. We're actually beginning this weekend, funnily enough. I've also been writing more songs with my friend Tony and our other mutual friend Heath, who lives in a different city, but we've worked out how to do things by email. So there's an acoustic folk funk record and a sort of an indie power pop album as well. These are all things that are going to keep me busy. I may make some more videos, because now that I've set up this microphone and that camera, I don't know, throw me a few questions, I'll rant at length at you. See if we can't get a few things to keep us going over the winter break. But in the meantime, I mean, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing. I don't want to sign off, because it feels like it's too soon to sign off, but I suppose I'll see you in a few months. Bye.